Barfield, of course, was a very interesting writer, philosopher, thinker. He was a great interpreter of Steiner's work, and his book, Saving the Appearances, is kind of his seminal philosophic work. And originally he intended it to be a book to make the case for Rudolf Steiner's philosophy and spiritual science. But then the book sort of became its own identity and became something self-contained. However, there is a very close relationship between Saving the Appearances and Steiner's philosophy. And I wanted to talk about that relationship a little bit because there does seem to be an apparent tension between the book, Saving the Appearances, and Steiner's philosophy of freedom, or Steiner's epistemology. And I wanted to go into that tension a little bit because I think that tension reveals something about both Barfield and Steiner. First of all, okay, so where's the tension coming from? Barfield goes to great lengths in the first part of his book to demonstrate and prove that the world of appearance around us, everything that we touch, smell, see, hear, and feel, is just a system of collective representation. That is to say, a system of mental representation, a representation within our mind that just happen to be collective. Everyone who has a mind happens to have the same collective representation. Now you might say this sounds an awful lot like what someone like Kant or Schopenhauer would say. That is, that the world is a mental representation. So Barfield sounds like he is on the side of the Kantian idea, or someone like Schopenhauer, who, of course, both of these thinkers, particularly Kant, Steiner goes to great lengths to argue against. So why then is Barfield on the side of this idea that the world is a mental representation? And yet at the same time, Barfield is trying to express and justify Rudolf Steiner's philosophy. In the course of the book, and towards the end of the book, Barfield writes an interesting passage. He says, "We cannot save souls unless we first save the appearances." And of course, hence the title of the book. So this is an important passage for Barfield, because he's naming the book Saving the Appearances. But now he says we can't save souls until we first save the appearances. And I think it's in this sentence where Barfield and Steiner meet and where the tension is resolved. But what does this mean? Another way we could express saving the appearances would be to say, well, if we believe that the world is a mere representation within our subjective mind, then if we can demonstrate that the world of appearance has an actual life in it and has its own reality, then simultaneously we are able to see that within our own mind there is something real and living. So by coming to a new relationship towards the appearances, we simultaneously are able to elevate our conception of our own minds from a mere projection of the unrepresented particles or whatever into something living and real. And I would imagine that this is where Barfield's Saving the Appearances comes into harmony with Rudolf Steiner's philosophy of freedom.